Welcome to part 4 of our lecture on the endocrine glands. We're going to start with the thyroid gland. The thyroid gland is on your neck, so your head would be like right here. This person has a lopsided head. And this is your Adam's apple, or your Eve's apple, right here. It's located down on the neck. And it's an H-shaped gland or a butterfly-shaped gland. And it's connected by this little bridge right here called the isthmus. And it produces two hormones, thyroid hormone and calcitonin. So thyroid hormone is a metabolic hormone. It controls metabolic rates of cells. So it's going to increase the metabolic rate. So it increases metabolism. So when you're cold, you make thyroid hormone because your cell metabolism is going to go up to make energy. And that produces heat. So it increases the metabolic rate, increases the use of energy, and it's needed for brain and development and normal growth. Now, a cretin. That's a person that is not very smart. And it actually comes from a region in France where they didn't have iodine. And iodine is needed for thyroid hormone. So without iodine, they didn't have enough thyroid hormone during development, so they didn't have proper brain development. So cretin was the word for somebody that's not very smart. I'd like to add a cretin, somebody from the Greek island of Crete, and they really do not like to be called not intelligent person, because the word is cretin. Other hormone is called calcitonin. Calcitonin lowers blood calcium. So let's say you ate a calcium fortified cereal for breakfast, you drank some milk, and then you washed it all down with calcium fortified orange juice, and you took your Tums pill in the morning for heartburn, which is just a glorified calcium pill. So elevated calcium is production. This is going to increase osteoblast activity, and it deposits calcium into bone, thus lowering blood calcium. So, there are these two little glands behind the thyroid. So this is the posterior view. And you have two parathyroid glands on this side, two on this side. I've read that you could have, some people actually have 3 on each side. Some people even have 4 on each side. But they're very tiny masses. And they're actually really important. They produce a hormone called parathyroid hormone. They are going to increase blood calcium. So they're the antagonist, the opposite of calcitonin. So they increase blood calcium. They increase osteoclast activity to remove calcium from bone. They are going to cause the kidneys to absorb more calcium. They're going to cause the intestines to absorb calcium. Their job, raise the calcium level. Fun fact on their disorder, if they don't work, usually because they've been removed by accident, the person dies somewhere between 12 and 48 hours later. The thyroid gland is made up of a series of follicles. The thyroid gland is made up of a series of follicles. So here's a follicle, here's a follicle, here's a follicle. And they have something in them called colloid. So I'll just color them in red. And this contains iodine and other precursors to make thyroid hormone. So people having thyroid problems, they can't make enough thyroid hormone, they're making too much. This enlarges so they get a goiter on their necks. Now the cells that surround it are called follicular cells. Follicles, let's do another set of follicular cells. We have our follicle, and then the follicular cells, are surrounding it. So this would be follicular cells. Now there's other cells in between the follicle. These are called parafollicular cells because they're around the follicle. So the follicular cells, these cells surrounding the follicle, right here, those are the follicular cells. They're going to make thyroid hormone using the ingredients in the colloid. These cells here, between the follicles, are the parafollicular cells. So they're going to be making calcitonin. So these are the follicular cells here, surrounding the follicle. Then this mass in here and this mass in here would be parafollicular cells. Now, on this picture, you can see the parathyroid gland. And the parathyroid gland is really fun to draw. I'm going to draw it right here. Whee! There's the parathyroid gland. That has these cells called chief cells. Now, there's cells elsewhere called chief cells, so don't get it confused. And the chief cells tend to be these very small cells that make parathyroid hormone. In the parathyroid gland, you'll also see masses of adipose. And then every once in a while, you will see a large oxyphil. It's a larger cell with a hollow nucleus, so that would be an oxyphil like that. And it's not known what they are. They think it might be a cell that's resting, or it could be a burnt out cell, so it's sort of like the chromophobes of the pituitary. They're not completely sure. Starting with the thyroid and the parathyroid gland right here. And we see in the thyroid, we have the follicles surrounded by follicular cells that are going to make thyroid hormone. Then in between, we have the parafollicular cells. Nestled up to it is the parathyroid gland. Remember, I said it's really fun to draw because you just put all these dots on for the chief cells. And then the oxyphils are just larger cells that look empty inside. What's the function of thyroid hormone? It increases metabolism. So it's going to increase your metabolic rate. The two calcium hormones, what does each one do? Parathyroid raises blood calcium, and calcitonin lowers blood calcium. And calcitonin increases osteoblast activity. Parathyroid hormone increases osteoclast activity. The adrenal gland sits on the kidney. So here's a kidney. Wow, it's kidney bean shaped, and the adrenal gland will sit right on. So here's the adrenal gland. Now the adrenal gland is actually two glands. It has a center medulla, which is actually an oversized sympathetic ganglia. So this is part of the sympathetic nervous system. Now this is the outer cortex, and that's where the steroid hormones are made.